Prestigious man, how you doing, man? Where you watching from, and are you hearing what I'm hearing here? How's it, Heartless Few Gaming? Howdy. How you doing? Can you hear me? I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I'll never leave you, mate. How's it? Where are you from, prestigious man? Oh, the UK. How's the weather in the UK? I'm in South Africa and it is cold, but not as cold as it is in the UK, obviously. You guys manufacture the cold weather.
Has some appeal on your desktop, but that's it, right? Well, look at this again, and you see it's totally the other way around. A computer you can put on your desktop easily calculates 3.4 billion times a second. Brain cells are much slower, only do 500 operations maximum speed. Computers don't do any mistakes. A rough estimation is 1 error in a trillion operations, and brains, probably you know that from your personal life, much more error prone and do mistakes 1 billion times as often.
It's always a little bit cloudy in the
Plug
UK.
into the
Yeah.
internet and you're connected
It's
with
always
the
a bit cloudy in the UK, isn't it?
because the brain is 99% self-oriented. Most of the nerve
Yeah, we got a bit of sun in South Africa as well, but for the most part, yeah.
see what's going on in
What do you do on YouTube? Do you have a channel? What's your content about? And all that.
lame, it is lousy, and it is selfish. And still it is working. Look around you, working brains wherever I look, more or less. But still, each one of you has the power to outperform every computer system by a very simple experiment. I can show you in a minute. So what do you see here? A face, you might say.
I just thought today I've got a bit of a free time to myself, and I thought let me exercise my mind by listening to TEDx talks. Do you ever listen to this channel, TEDx talks? It's motivational speaking, psychology, and that kind of thing. Do you know about it?
Thousands, even millions of steps to come to the same result. This leads us to the fundamental principle of how we think, because it's totally different from anything we know of in our world. So how would a computer approach that kind of problem? Well, computers use algorithms. Algorithms basically stepwise recipes telling you what to do. So when a computer faces a certain problem, for instance, recognize a face or solve an equation or whatsoever,
That's good, man. What do you do? Do you have a channel?
process that input.
Okay. It's really good. I think it's mind-boggling, but at the same time, it teaches you to sort of view your mind differently, or view motivation differently, and everything that you do, basically, be it in sport or in the corporate world. Are you working in school? What do you do?
Computers break down. Brains do not break down unless you apply some external force or alcohol or something like that. But usually, brains are very robust. And that's because we think with a trick. When an input hits our eyes, the input is processed by the sensory cells in our eyes, and they get activated and activate the neighbors in this neuronal network. So this is like a simplified model of your brain in action. Now, you have to agree, for didactic reasons, I drastically oversimplified that model of your personal brain. At least I hope so. But you still see the basic principle. Brain cells are dumb on their own.
Then why aren't you in school, bud? Why are you at home? Why are you on your computer?
An activity state of that specific neuronal network. Yeah? And this activity pattern, this is what we call a thought. Big difference to a computer. The brain does not distinguish between processing and output, because processing the information is the thought itself. That's kind of tricky, but maybe it's similar to an orchestra. If you look at an orchestra from outside, seeing all the musicians sitting next to each other but not playing any music, you have no idea whatsoever melody this orchestra is able to play. Just like the brain. When you look at the brain from outside, you have no clue whatsoever thoughts this system is able to think. In an orchestra, the melody...
Okay, so it's what, 6 weeks off, and that is holiday, or it's a study break. How do you guys go about it?
So the music, the melody, is among the players, just like a thought in the brain is among the brain cells when they synchronize with each other. So a thought is not located anywhere. A thought is how the brain cells interact and how they process the information. So That's different to a computer because no matter what kind of processing computer uses, whether it's algorithmic or a deep learning network or whatever fancy method we will come up with in the future, it will always be input processing output, without mistakes, hopefully. But if you don't do any mistakes, you just end up at the place you're programmed for, but nowhere new. Computers are intelligent, but intelligence is nothing special. Intelligence means you follow the rules as fast and efficient as possible, but not to change rules. No super intelligent computer will ever rule the world because intelligence is not enough. You need to be a rule breaker, a game changer. You need to be crazy and creative too. And it's the mistake in our thinking, not the perfection, that separates us from the non-creative machines. What do I mean by mistake? Well, it means that we can come up with a new thought.
Wow, that is amazing, man. That is, wow. I think it gives everyone a chance to rest up as well and travel, go on holidays, vacations, that kind of thing. Wow, amazing. Here in South Africa, they just go on 1 month holiday or 2 weeks holiday, depending on when. I think the longest is in December, where schools go on holiday the beginning, if not the second week of December, only to come back in the second week of January. So that's the longest holiday. Then obviously there's others in June and in September, but then there's what at max probably 2 weeks. So you guys get quite a lot there. Amazing. What do you want to study when you finish high school into uni?
And we call that special type of thinking, concept thinking, or categorized thinking. And instead of explaining the theoretical background and explaining what's behind that, I give you an example. How you create new ideas. Who thinks that this is a chair? Please raise your hand. All right, thank you. So who thinks that these are chairs too? Please raise your hand. All right, very well. You're quite familiar with furniture. It's very good. Yes. But here's the task. Who thinks that these are also chairs? Yeah, the longer I wait, the more hands I see. Thank you. But why? Why do you think that this blue plastic ball with 3 stumps is a chair? Well, this is the big difference between the computer world and
Hello
the
everyone,
brain
join the
world.
conversation.
What you see
I'm
up
just
here
listening to
is what we
TED
call
Talks.
deep learning.
Listening to TED Talk and let's get some motivation and just understand what the brain does and the psychology behind. And you are here and you practice psychology, it'll be great. Just give me a hi and let's chat. Let's ask questions around and let's know. Oh, wow. When you say you kinda wanna be an engineer, is it something that you are, is it someone that is your inspiration, maybe a family member? Where did the idea behind being an engineer come from?
Computers learn, but learning is nothing special because animals learn, blackbirds learn, dolphins learn, elephants learn, computers learn, we understand. Deep learning is great, but deep understanding is better because when you learn something, you can unlearn it.
That's a powerful statement. Learning is great, but deep understanding is better.
Because understanding means
Did you get that?
you change the way you process information. And since processing and output is one and the same in our brain, we understand very fast on the spot. As I said, another example. No computer is able to follow that problem, but you are able to understand it within a minute. I'm not a good illustrator at all, but it should be enough. So, I say that this is a flower. If this is a flower, what is this? A tree. If this is a flower and this is a tree, what could this be? A forest, or a garden, or whatsoever. So you understood this. But I say that this is a child. If this is a child, what could this be? A grown-up. If this is a child and this is a grown-up, what is this?
Who else is here? Hello, say hi to me. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, I did my brother. Well, I did. My brother is like, I think he's an engineer. And when I realized he was an engineer, kind of just like clicked onto me that I kind of wanted to be an engineer. Amazing, bud. Amazing.
That how powerful you are to understand things on the spot. A couple of weeks ago, my 2-year-old neighbor walked into my apartment, looked up at the ceiling, and said, "Oh, smoke detector." I said, "What? What kind of parents does this little boy have?"
The sky is the limiter. You can do it. Just believe in yourself, get your grades together, math, physics, all those engineering subjects, and yeah, it will happen, but it will happen.
Smoke detector only once or twice, but that was enough for him to understand the meaning of the whole thing. We know from lab studies that children are able to understand the meaning of new stuff, of toys, of birds, of animals at first sight. That's amazing, and you do it as well. How long did it take you to understand the word Brexit? Maybe you've seen that once or twice in the media. That was enough. But once you understood it, you can do stuff with it. When you know what a Brexit is, what could a Swexit be? Or a Frexit? Or an Etaxit? Never seen before, but you understand that at first sight. Even more, when you know what a Brexit is, what could a remain be or a return? Never seen before, but understand it on the spot. Remember that sad face you've seen on the blue screen before? Well, this poor guy differs from this happy one by 50% in its data. But for us, it is 100% difference. You see how powerful our way of thinking is. But how do we make use of it to stay creative and innovative in the future? Well, first thing to realize, don't do it like computers. Many people think that it's important nowadays to work harder, faster, and more efficient to solve problems. But that's exactly what machines can do. Every efficient procedure will be replaced by algorithms eventually. What cannot be replaced? Inefficient thinking, integrating new ideas, giving rise to understanding of stuff. How do we do that? Well, first, we take breaks. We sleep. We lose attention and focus and get distracted. This seems inefficient at first sight, but sometimes it's very effective if you step back and see the same things in a different context. Because if you only dig into the data, just rely on data and information and never step back, take some time off to understand the whole picture of it, you will never be able to make sense of it. Second, when you ask people, where do you get a good idea? 70% answer under the shower, followed by during sports, driving a car, vacuum cleaning the apartment, washing the dishes. See the pattern here? Whenever we do some automated, routine, boring stuff, we seem to clear our mind and attract new ideas. In fact, this is a great technique many creative geniuses used. Dig into the problem, focus on the task, get involved, and then step back. Do something unrelated. Not a new problem, but chillax. In ancient Greece, this was godified by saying to be kissed by a muse. But you have to create a kiss-friendly atmosphere for such a muse. And this means that you step back, that you do something unrelated, that some automated, routine, sometimes boring stuff, because otherwise it won't be possible to put the same things into a new context. Third, escape the echo chamber. Nowadays, it's so easy to be surrounded by convenient but
No, but you need to break that. You need to break that. What do you call it? The low grades curse. Be the one that's going to say, you know what? No. I'm going to be the one that is making a difference in my family. I'm going to be the one that is going to make sure that I am the engineer that I want to be, and probably push your next generation or your lineage into a next level of quality engineers that are going to make or be part of the best. What's the word? I'm trying to think of the word. Guys that are going to make a difference in the life or in this society or in this community. So you need to break that. Remember, power of life and death is in the tongue. So whatever that you say then it's going to be. So don't ever say, geez, low grades is part of the family. Say, I'm going to be the change that I need in my family.
We don't know yet. But we can be pretty sure that it will be created by brains. Not because we are smarter, faster, or more intelligent than computers, but the opposite. We are slower. We are irrational and imperfect. That's why we understand the world instead of analyzing it. And this is giving us the ultimate edge we should appreciate and be more proud of, because this is what makes us human. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful. Awesome, awesome. It's good to have you here, man. I just posted, if you check on my community posts, I just posted the link to what we're watching just now. So maybe you can go ahead and go on to that and just have a listen. The next one that we're going to watch now, I'm going to listen to, or you're going to listen to. Unfortunately, I can't put the video on because of copyright issues. But it is putting yourself out there. So let's see what this lady is going to speak. Lori Granito. Let's see what she's going to say. And this was 8 years ago. But then the importance of this is, it was 8 years ago, but it is still equally as important in our day-to-day living, which is very, very good. So thank you so much. If you watch that, please consider liking or sharing and subscribing to my podcast or to my channel. That way I can grow and get to have this conversation and get to have this relationship with you. So I appreciate you.
I've heard a lot of people on this stage talking about body image issues, and I just want to say your worth is not determined by the number on the scale. And I want to very much, Bertha, we were really inspired by your talk. Putting yourself out there is not easy. It's hard to push ourselves to do things that push us out of our and that we feel self-conscious about. Now, I'm sure quite a few of you have probably seen that show, American Idol. People get up in front of this panel of judges, sing their hearts out. Let's be honest.
What did I do now?
Thank you, everyone. Before I get started, I'm going to go a little bit off script, just because I've heard a lot of people on this stage talking about body image issues, and I just want to say, your work is not determined by a number on the scale. As you can see, I'm a big, beautiful woman, and I want to say thank you very much, Bertha. We were really inspired by your talk. Now, putting yourself out there is not easy. It's hard to push ourselves to do things that push us out of our comfort zone and that we feel self-conscious about. Now, I'm sure quite a few of you have probably seen that show, American Idol. People get up in front of this panel of judges.
And thanks for subscribing,
their
man.
hearts out.
Really appreciate your
Let's
sub.
be honest, some of them not very well.
Got so much content
For
on the
the
channel
chance
that
and
speaks
for
on mental health.
Now,
And,
how many of you
Yeah, sports as well. Cricket, there's a part of cricket, there's a part of mental health, there's a part of ladies just chatting about their thing. So I think we've got like 200 videos on there, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be one that is relevant to you, even in your school or in your schooling system. So thank you, and there's so much for you to watch. Thanks for the sub.
capacity and our appetite to be daring diminishes as soon as we think somebody is going to be judging us or when we start worrying about what other people think. When my daughter was about 6 or 7 years old, we went to her school for this kiddie talent show, and it was going to be followed by this Michael Jackson dance-off competition. The auditorium was packed full of people. And after the real talent show finished, they invited everyone to come on stage, anyone that wanted to to participate in this competition, including parents. Now, this was the French school, but unfortunately, there was no wine available. And as a result, none of the parents were sufficiently sauced to actually consider that option as something serious. Instead, we all sort of stood to the side and we bobbed to the music. We clapped as the little kids got on stage. We laughed as they roped in a teacher here and there, all the while thinking, better you than me. So then the music changed from Bad to Billie Jean. And I don't know, the MC found his groove. He really wanted to get some parents up there, so we instinctively all kind of took a step backwards. And then we laughed because this little 5-year-old girl dragged her dad onto the stage. And my girlfriend, who had come to the show with me, she turns around to me and she goes, "Lori, you love Michael Jackson. Girl, you should go up there." I don't think so. And she said, "I dare you." Now, as a reasonable, responsible adult role model that I am, I had to actually wait until she double dared me before I decided to get up there. Now, my poor child, she was too young to understand that she really should have been embarrassed because she's clapping and she's thinking her mom is going to get down on the stage, not even realizing that, much like Harry Potter is always known as the boy who lived and has a scar, she is about to forever be known as the girl whose mom moonwalked on stage. So I start making what I think is this long trek down to the stage. And then I start thinking, well, my kid just started going here. I don't really know any of the parents. So to psych myself up as I'm walking down to the stage, I start going, "Girl, you don't know any of these people anyway." But that is quickly followed by, "Lori, you are such an idiot. Why would you say you're going to do this?" So I finally get down to the side of the stage, and I want to turn around. But I take a deep breath, I walk out onto the stage, I thank the Lord that I have rhythm, and I do my thing. And I gotta say, I was pretty damn good. But alas, I was outdone by the cuteness of a 3-year-old, or as my daughter said later that night, "Mama, you were robbed." Now, we look back on that day quite a lot and we laugh. We had so much fun and we look back on it with such fondness. And I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had actually turned around. You see, I understood that I was really entirely, completely comfortable with going on stage and making a complete fool of myself because I was prepared to just not care that other people were judging me. I decided that I wasn't going to worry about what other people thought. How many of you are missing out on opportunities because you are afraid or embarrassed? What could you do? What could you achieve if you understood that your real job in this life is not to worry about what the hell other people are thinking about you? Your real job is to be uniquely, awesomely, imperfectly you, taking a chance. Now, a couple of weeks ago, one of my girlfriends asked me what advice I would give to my 20-year-old self. And I said, be open to possibilities, but understand that what you think you want may not be what you actually want, or even what you need. I wear a lot of hats. Personally, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm a good friend. Professionally, I'm an entrepreneur, a mentor, a chef, a restaurateur. But to be honest, I never planned on being in the food business. And when I was in high school or university, if somebody had told me this is what I would be doing, I would never have believed them. Sometimes the thing that you're supposed to become just finds you. Now, what a lot of people don't know about me is that I'm not a trained chef. I never went to culinary school. I never even worked in a restaurant or a kitchen before I started my own catering company. I worked in tell, and I thought I would just climb the corporate ladder. The reason I got into the food business was really a fluke. I was meeting with a girlfriend, and she told me about these two ladies that she had read about that started this catering company from home. And I thought, well, maybe I can make some extra money doing that. I mean, I'm from New Orleans, I can cook, I got pots, I got pans, I got fire. Well, what I really had was 2 burners and a rice cooker in a tiny little apartment in Causeway Bay. And as I said, I had no experience, and my business plan consisted of pretty much put an ad in the paper, let's see what happens. And so that's what I did. And lo and behold, the first call I got was actually not for a job. It was from a reporter from the local newspaper, and they wanted to do a feature on my new catering company. Now, I was not a company, I was an ad. I mean, I didn't even have the pots and pans. I had to go out and buy a tiny little oven that sat on top of my fridge, the size of a microwave, and that would ding every 60 minutes, and that was what I cooked pies in. And so I had to kind of new project, new venture is scary. But I think a lot of times people overthink it. They want everything to be perfect and just right. But that's never going to happen. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't plan. But what I am saying is that sometimes you need to be okay with not knowing what's going to come next. Sometimes you just have to take the first step. Now, I read a quote once that said, "Take the leap and the net will appear." Now, I don't know who wrote that, but they should have had some fine print with that, because let me tell you, a lot of times what it should have said is, take the leap, the net may or may not appear, and there may be some rocks involved. Now, I work with a lot of people who come to me saying, I want to take that leap, I want to be an entrepreneur, you know, I want to go for it. And so I tell them that, well, I don't
Easier
consider
said
myself
than
just
done.
an
Being an entrepreneur,
consider
I don't
myself
think it's for
a successful
everyone.
failure. And so I'll usually ask them, well, are you prepared to be a failure?
Are you
Now,
prepared to
naturally,
work a
some people
72-hour
say
day?
But
Stuff.
most people will just shake their heads and say, no, of course, I don't want to be a failure.
Stuff. But I
So
don't think
tell
anyone
them
walks
that
in to
if you wanna
fail
be
anyway.
an entrepreneur, then you need to embrace the possibility that failure may be part of your journey.
Yeah. And it's
Now,
okay to
I haven't
fail as
always
well.
been this zen about failure. I mean, I have taken a lot of leaps, I have missed a lot of nets, and there have been a lot of rocks involved. I've gotten banged, bruised, and beat up almost to the point where I wanted to give up. Back in 2001, I came to the painful realization that my businesses were failing. I was a new mom, but my first restaurant was my other baby. And I was devastated the day that it closed. And I just sort of plodded along for a few years after that, just really my spirit broken. I mean, they were very, very dark days. But not only was my spirit broken, my bank account was pretty broke as well. But it's interesting that people have such different perceptions, because my daughter was the first kid in her playgroup to be completely potty trained, and everybody thought I was super mom. Nobody had any idea it was because I couldn't afford to buy diapers. In fact, my reality check came the day I went down to the ATM machine to to get 100 Hong Kong dollars out to buy diapers. And I had $97 in my account. So I had to go into the bank, line up, and write a check for $95, because you know you got to leave a little bit of something in there. And I went back home humiliated and really just wanting a good cry. Now, any of you that have brothers or sisters, kids, you know, if you want them to get off your back and have some alone time, all you got to do is put in their favorite movie over and over and over again. Well, my daughter's favorite movie at the time was Finding Nemo. And as I'm sitting on my bed, crying my eyes out with this cheap Paul Masson wine on the side, surrounded by this pile of bills, you know, gas, final notice, electricity being cut off the next day, I hear this little voice singing, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming. Now, I probably should not tell you guys this, but I do have full-fledged conversations with myself. And right then, I was said, Lori, girl, you can't continue on like this. You got to get a grip. I knew that I could get bitter or I could get better. I had to make a choice to either deal with what was being thrown in front of me, take another leap of faith, and let it make me stronger, or let it break me. I had to keep swimming. Now, a lot of different people have talked about taking leaps of faith. My favorite is from a guy named Steve Harvey, and for those of you who don't know who he is, he's the one that called out the wrong Miss Universe. But he's a pretty motivational guy otherwise. He talks about standing on this cliff of life. And the only way to be successful is for you to jump off that cliff. And when you get up there, you're going to see all of these people soaring past you. They've got great lives. They're going amazing places. They're doing all of these things. Maybe they've got material wealth that you desire, or maybe they're just living lives that are meaningful to them. And they're able to do that because they have jumped and their parachutes have opened. And the only way for you to be able to soar is for you to jump. But there is a catch. The first couple of times you jump, your parachute is not going to open. You're going to fall down on the rocks, you're going to get banged up, beat up, bruised. But the promise is that if you continue to jump, eventually your parachute will open and you will be able to soar. Now, I know there's a couple of people out there thinking, well, damn, first I had a net, now there's no net. Now it's just all the rocks involved. I don't think so. I think I'm going to stay here where it's safe. And you could do that. That could be your strategy. But that's fear talking. And the only thing that's sure is if you do stay where it's safe, it is guaranteed that your parachute will never open and you will never soar. Now that was Steve Harvey with a little bit of me thrown in there. I generally like to say to people that safety is the enemy of greatness. And everything you want lies on the other side of that fear. Because you see, when you
Everything you want lies on the other side of fear. That's a deep
you
statement right there.
That's not failure. That's merely clearing a path towards your life's work. And everything that you're going through, every time you fall, is preparing you for everything that you're meant to be. You see, each of us has that thing or things that makes you and only you uniquely awesome. It's that place where you shine brightest and that gets you.
How did you deal with self-doubt?
Embrace that awesomeness. Because at various points in your life, you are going to be given opportunities for those gifts to flourish. And you may not recognize them for what they are. And you may recognize them, and they may not work out the first time you try them. But when those opportunities present themselves, you have to take a deep breath, step back, and ask yourself, are you ready to jump? Thank you.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. Let's move on to the next. Let's find another one. And just learn, 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 learn. Thanks to Laura Granito for giving us. It's really tough. Self-doubt is, they say that it's easy for you to believe negative about yourself than it is to believe the positive that you're doing in this world. So you ask yourself, it's easy for me to go like, I'm not good enough. I'm not a good YouTuber, or I'm not a good student, or I'm not a good husband, I'm not a good wife, I'm not good, I'm not good, I'm not good, than it is to actually look at it and go, I think I'm doing a pretty damn good job here. It's easy to believe the negative than it is to believe the positive. And it's one thing that we just need to learn and just sort of turn tables around and see how best we can, or how much we can achieve if we just change our perception of our mindset. That to me is a take on. Your own life coach. Let's see what this guy's gonna give us. John Maudun. Yeah, self-doubt is tough. It's really tough.
My name is John Muldoon. That was quite the intro, by the way. Thank you. I am the principal of the high school here on the Puxi campus of Shanghai American School. And I'll tell you, I'm a little nervous to be standing up here today. I've stood on this stage a lot this year, and I've talked with a lot of different people.
There's a join button on my channel, and if you'd love to be a member, that would be really great because it will help us as well. So if you're just joining, we're just chatting and talking about self-doubt and how to deal with it. Or the question on the poll is, have you ever dealt with self-doubt? If you have, let us know what you did with it. If you have, just press yes or no on the chat box on the poll. I just want to have a chat to you guys and just have a listen to what you guys are going through and how you deal with things. That's how I learn, or how I deal with things, that's how you learn as well. But more than anything, this TED Talk, it's all motivation stuff that is to do with the brains, what really happens in the psychology of the brains and everything that we go through in this life. I've got my man, prestigious man from the UK. My name is Tatenda from South Africa. And yeah, let's learn together, man.
Here's the thing. Our brains are supremely powerful organs. And we don't often think about how we're using them, right? I can pinpoint the first time I actually thought about how we use our brain. I was in 6th grade. So I was in 6th grade, and I'll be honest with you, my family was going through a really hard time, a really horrible time, actually. We spent a lot of time in the car. So my dad's driving, my mom's sitting next to him up front, my sister and my brother and I in the back, cramped. It's always a good recipe for. And my father is compulsively listening to motivational tapes, right? Yeah, cassette tapes, right? Yeah, so he's listening to cassette tapes with all these people who are telling me and my family, the speakers of the car, how great life is and how awesome we are and how everything is going to be amazing. It was like the worst, right? It was objectively the worst thing ever and totally not what I wanted to hear when I was going through some horrible things that I could not control. And I'll never forget, I remember this one in particular, this guy, I should ask my dad if he still has a tape. So this guy says that the key to happiness is to talk to yourself. But not just like talk to yourself.
The key to happiness is to talk to yourself. Do you ever talk to yourself?
Every day, and it sounded so ridiculous, I actually listened to it, right? He's like, you get up every day and you go to the mirror and you look at yourself and you're like, you look good.
I think that's affirmations. The power of affirmations.
Awesome. Right? And he said if you do this all the time, you'll actually get little voices that develop in your head that say nice things to you all day long. And so here I am, I'm like 11 or 12 years old, and I'm like training your brain to get little voices that talk to you all day long. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure that's the mark of something not good, right? I can't tell you how many fights we had about this as a family, mostly started by me, right? Like, why can't we just listen to the radio like a normal family? But I'll never forget it. Part of it is because we were going through what was probably the darkest chapter of my father's life. And he chose to listen to somebody tell him good things. It was a choice he made. I didn't understand that back then. So you fast forward a little bit. I had just become an assistant principal in my life, right? So I guess we're fast forwarding a lot. I'm feeling pretty good. And I find out that my favorite teacher ever, my 6th grade social studies teacher, is retiring. So I'm like, I'm going to stop by and see him. That day I drove to the school. I didn't tell him I was coming. I just went. I don't know why I did. He was my favorite teacher. He helped me through so much in that same time period in my life when I went through so much. So I just walked. No one stopped me. It was amazing. I walked right down the hallway, right to his old classroom. He's still there like he always was, right? I open the door and I go in. And he looks up at me and he goes, "Holy hell." Well, actually, that's not what he said. I can't tell you what he said on this stage, but he said something like that. And he comes over and he gives me this big hug and he says, "John Muldoon, I can't believe you're still alive." Right? And I'm like, are you confusing me with another John Muldoon? But he wasn't. And actually the truth is that he was right. We talked a lot about it. He only knew me at that time period in my life. Well, I'll tell you, I was so angry, right? And our parting thought he left me with. So he's not around anymore. It's a little sad to think about. But the parting thought that he left me with was how proud he was of seeing me and how happy I seemed. Because he said in over 35 years of teaching, he had never met an angrier kid than me. And it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of tragic that I remember him so fondly, and I think about that's his memory of me.
He had never met an angrier kid
of like all the anger. Anyways, the change didn't happen overnight for me. If you fast forward a little bit, or actually rewind from when I became an assistant principal, I was in 9th grade, I was in high school, things were still not going well for me. I was actually angrier than I had been in 6th grade, which is saying something. I didn't have any friends. I mean, I was so isolated. My grades were awful. Like, I am not ashamed to tell you, I was just about to fail out of high school by the middle of the year, of my freshman year. And I had this history teacher, another history teacher, that took an interest in me, right? It's probably my second favorite teacher. Maybe why I became a history teacher myself, actually. And he was like a Jedi, right? Like, I owe this man my life. He conducted what I can only call psychological warfare on me. He got me so angry that he tricked me into wanting to do well at school. I don't know how he did it. Like, I think about it now, I have no idea how it happened. But it did. And please do not underestimate the magnitude of this transformation. I was talking with my counselor about how I was not going to be coming back to school next year if I didn't turn things around, right? And all of a sudden I was getting all A's and B's. And I was being nicer to people. And I actually maybe was working my way towards making friends, right? Like, actually, yeah, whatever. The transformation was so severe, my father sat me down and he asked me if I was on drugs, right? Like, and that's pretty messed up when you think like, son, your grades have just gotten really good. And, it looks like maybe you have some friends now and you're not so miserable to be around. Are you on the drugs? Right? Like, that's actually how it went. But this rosy period of my life was not destined to last because, as I think everybody here knows, you really can't trick a halfway intelligent teenager into doing something they don't want to do for too long. And so by the end of the year, the gig was up, and I had this huge confrontation with this teacher, which, like, if we're being honest, was not smart on me to pick a verbal fight with a, like, Jedi psychological warfare mind master. But I left the year feeling so angry and deflated and confused. And thinking, though, is the key word. I left the year thinking, like, how did this happen? And I was thinking about it because I was so angry at myself, actually, that I had let him trick me. And so I didn't know it at the time, but I was in search of an epiphany. And I wish I could tell you that it happened and it was amazing and it was like this moment that changed everything right away and it was on top of a mountain and, right? But that's actually, it's not how it happened. I was at work at this like horrible summer job. And it wasn't something that happened and changed my life right away. But I'm standing there, I'm at work, and this mom comes in with this little kid. And he's got one of those like little Matchbox model cars, right? You know what I'm talking about? So he's got this little Matchbox car. And I hope you're ready for this. It was a model of my dad's old car. Like the same crazy sparkly gold paint with the weird white roof. Like it was a model of my dad's old car. I could practically hear the tape of the guy with the voices in your head talking to me. Right? Like my brain hurt when I saw that car. And I'm like, it's all within a week of getting out of school. And I stand there, there's no coincidence in my mind. It cannot be a coincidence that this guy tricks my brain. And I thought I was pretty smart. He tricked me into doing something I didn't want to do. And then a couple days later, I'm reminded of this other time in my life where someone told me you can trick your brain into doing anything. So I started thinking about it. There has to be a connection. And I know now, and we all had these hats on, they had to duck and kind of tilt their head. They did it even when they didn't wear their hats.
Yeah, it is.
And they were like, why is that? So they studied it, and they figured out that if you have a pattern that establishes itself in your brain, absent a conscious decision not to do it, you'll do it. It's not rocket science, right? It's pretty deductive for us now. There's a lot of studies on it. There's another one about doors, oddly enough, right? In 2013, there's a group of scientists that are working with young women that have anorexia. And they notice that they don't walk through the door the way they were expecting them to. Despite the fact that all of them were on the smaller side, and the doors were double doors like we have in the back of the auditorium here, they walked through sideways, like they were sneaking past someone, right? Or squeezing through, despite the fact that there was plenty of room. So they looked at it. They added it to their study. They expanded the scope of their study, and they wanted to figure it out. And they found that they had such patterns of disordered thinking in the brain that it influenced so many of their behaviors. And the crazy thing of like how they walk through doors, and the crazy thing about it is that they had no idea that they had these patterns of thinking running that way in their brain, and they were not aware of the influence on their behavior all the time. You know, there's so many. There's another one, and then I'll stop sharing studies with you. There's one from the University of Pennsylvania. They actually found, when they studied football players, that by imagining throwing a football properly, you have a similar performance gain to when you actually practice it physically. That's crazy, right? You can practice doing something in your mind and it has not quite the same magnitude of effect, but a similar effect to doing it physically is really unbelievable. Now, I didn't know any of this then, right? I didn't know that the patterns in your brain start being established when you're young. All of the messages that you all hear when you were younger, all the messages that you hear right now, even the ones you're not aware of, they get in somehow. And the more you hear something, the more it takes root. The more your brain accepts it, even if you disagree with it. And these roots grow. And if we use the kind of vernacular from the audio cassette guy, that's when the voices start, right? That's when you start having patterns of behavior influence other ways that you think, the way you feel, and the things that you do. This is why some people, and we see this, right? We all know people like this. They've been told from when they were really young that if they work really hard and they don't give up, that they can do anything. Right? Those people act differently than people that get the opposite message, that they can never do anything right. Even though they probably disagree with the message that they can never do anything right.
Reception there.
This is
I'm sorry
when,
about that.
like,
Are
thinking
you?
about it, I wonder
Is
if
it
I
fine
lost
now?
my mind sometimes.
Can you hear everything
The
properly?
voices in your head, if that's what we're calling them, they talk to each other. They're having a conversation in your head. I'm a visual thinker. Speed dating event, right? We're in a big auditorium and all these little like positive.
Perfect,
talk to each
perfect.
other,
Thanks, man.
and what
You know how it is with the
interacting with
bandwidth.
each other,
Sometimes it just
positive
lags
patterns lessen the
and
effect of the
disturbs.
negative
Sorry.
patterns. The negative patterns lessen the effect of the positive patterns, right?
I love
It's
this
incre-
part.
It makes
Wait,
sense.
let's
it's
go back a
incredible.
little bit there.
This, when you like look at it on a macro level, is why someone who's supreme happens is when they're interacting with each other, the positive patterns lessen the effect of the negative patterns. The negative patterns lessen the effect of the positive patterns,
You get that?
right? It's incredible. I mean, it makes sense. But it's
Negative
incredible.
overrides positive,
And this,
but
when
we
you,
want
like, look
positive
at
to
it on a
override
macro level,
negative.
Is why someone who's supremely positive bounces back from bad news much faster
Faster.
than someone who's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are less faced by a setback in their life. Because they
But
have
has
a lot of
anyone
positive
ever
thought
been so
processes.
positive
counteract
that you're like, ah man, you're too
Doesn't make them less
positive for my
likely to
liking?
understand
But
what's
it's actually a good thing.
But they feel differently about it, and they might act differently. The converse is true. So not cool. And I know
My
it.
bandwidth is acting up.
That's okay. I own it. So I'm like, I'm going to do exactly what that guy on the tape said I should do. So I woke up, and so none of this is a surprise to anyone that knows me. I'm a very intense person, right? I woke up every day, and I looked in that mirror, and I told myself how amazingly cool I was, right? I was like the best-looking, coolest kid that went to my school. And this is actually really embarrassing, but my wife said I shouldn't share this part, but I'm going to share this part. I actually got blue paint. Blue's my favorite color. And I painted on the wall across from my bed 4 big letters, COOL,
Cool.
right?
I like that.
And I'm like, I'm going for broke. And then I don't know if it's because I was 15, if it's because I was like desperate for something positive in my life, or what. But after a while, I convinced myself that I was, in fact, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? Jeremy, our school psychologist, and I are going to have to unpack that later. But, and then something amazing happens. Because we all know, right? Like, I didn't really change that much about me. I was changing the way I was thinking about me. But my sister, my younger sister, who, by the way, was super cool and always really popular, she comes bursting through the door one day while I'm sitting in my bed, literally talking to myself about how cool I am. And she just like can't take it anymore. She's like, you are so not cool. If you have to tell yourself that you are cool, you are not cool. Even worse, if you have to tell other people that you're cool, you're hurting yourself even more. And then, like, I know she's amazing now, but at the time, oh my God, right? She looks at me and she's like, maybe, and this is brilliant. She didn't mean it to be brilliant, but it was brilliant. Maybe you should not try to be cool. Maybe you should just try to be happy for a little bit so that we're not all miserable being around you. Right? Harsh. So she leaves, and not the norm for me at the time, I didn't react. I just kind of sat there in my bed, like crushed. My experiment a failure. Thinking about how uncool I am, but also thinking, like, it's not that I don't feel happy. I also don't feel unhappy. And that was so weird for me to think about. And I realized, and I had never, like, thought about it, like, my predominant emotion, my, like, real only emotion that I was consistently feeling was anger. I was mad. And I did the smartest thing I've ever done in my life, still to this day. I asked myself, why? Why was I so mad? And I went all the way back to 6th grade. And I started thinking about all the things that had happened and how they were all out of my control. I was pulling at all the threads. It was horrible. It was painful to think about. And I didn't pick up another experiment right away. It took me a little while as I'm thinking about all this. Thinking about how I was thinking, thinking about how I was feeling. But eventually I decided that I couldn't take my sister's advice. I couldn't try to be happy. It was just too big, right? I was going to do a second experiment. I was just going to try to be thankful for some things in my life that were good every day.
Power of being grateful.
But I attacked it with the same intensity I attacked trying to be cool, right? So, like, I mean, I was an animal. I was thanking everyone for everything, right? You let me borrow a pencil, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, right? And I mean, like, I would show up on your doorstep 5 years after you did something if I was grasping at straws for something to thank someone for, and I would thank you for something you did 5 years ago. And people didn't really know how to take me. It was kind of like back when I had that rapid transformation during the school year. Nobody knew what was going on with me. Nobody could explain it. Some people actually thought when I thanked them for things, I was making fun of them. And actually, my dad asked me if I was on drugs again. But this was like the watershed moment in my life. I actually started to realize there were so many good things in my life that I was missing because I was so busy being angry at everything. And I also realized that thinking about how I was always angry at things helped me realize when I was getting angry and stop it. And I actually was feeling happier, right? So while I'm going through all this, I start making all of these rules, like these rules for life. I call them like trade secrets for not being a jerk, right? Actually, that's pretty negative. I call them trade secrets. We can call them trade secrets for like being a good person. And I can share some of them with you. I'll share 2 of them with you. The first one is one I've been doing every day since I was 15 years old, my first rule. I give sincere thanks 3 times a day. 3 times a day, that's it. Right? Now, I do it a lot more than that. But I give sincere thanks 3 times a day.
Giving sincere thanks.
The second rule is be great. And it's not like be great like objectively. I'm great because I'm trying to convince myself I'm great. I respond so over the top, so positive, because that's a signal to me. It's actually a moment that I take every time somebody asks me how I'm doing to check in. How do I actually feel? And most of the time, I feel really great. I'm an intense person. We've already established that. So I feel really great, and that's awesome. 99.9% of the time, I'm not lying to you. 0.1% of the time, I don't know. I do. And I might say, actually, I'm not feeling great. And depending on how well we know each other, I might say more, I might not. I don't know. But think about how many times a day you are asked how you are or what's up. That's how many times a day I think actively about how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. And next step, what am I going to do about it? Because if we don't actively manage these patterns in our brain, they manage us. And if you don't think about how you're going to do that, if you don't have a system or something that works for you, you're just letting it go. You're just letting things happen. I couldn't.
What's your favorite movie?
Where that got me in my life. I couldn't do it. So there's a couple things that go with this, right? I told you this is a very unsciencey way to approach it, right? Scientists actually have a way that behavioral scientists have a way that they talk about this. And I never say them in the right order, so I have a flashcard. What they actually say is that the first thing you do is that you have to identify emotion in the pattern, right? You have to recognize you're having it. You have to put a name on it. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm whatever. The second thing is you have to source it. It's not enough just to say I'm angry. Why are you angry? Where is that anger coming from? You have to pull at those threads. It's not easy. It takes time. It's pretty painful sometimes. The next thing you have to do is identify what you actually want to be. If you're sad, do you want to be happy? That's also not so easy sometimes. And then the next one, and this makes it sound awfully like you're a computer. You have to consciously manage the way you think about that thing and the pattern that controls those things in your brain so that you like overwrite the bad pattern with the good pattern. The old pattern with the new pattern. That's what I'm talking about right now, right? There's a lot of critics for all the resources out there. There are people that say,
Oh yeah, Deadpool is that's a,
the first answer
it's
is that
it's
this is
more
all
comedy
about
than the
honesty. It
action.
doesn't work if you're not
So I
honest,
don't understand.
right? If you wake up every day and you're just trying to be cool, right? Or you tell yourself that you're great when you're not, and you don't think about why you're not really great and how you really feel, it doesn't work. So the deception critique doesn't hold up for me. But if I'm being honest with you, I also don't care, right? This works for me. Like I just said, my 6th grade teacher thought I wasn't going to make it. I was so unhappy and angry. That's no way to go through life. I don't want to say that thinking like this and finding this way and the system that works for me saved me from death, but it definitely saved my life in more ways than it didn't. And I'm so profoundly thankful for all the happy little accidents along the way of my life that helped me to just stumble onto it. So think about your thinking, listen to the voices in your head, and be your own best coach. Thank you for having me tonight.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for joining. If you're still here, we're moving on to the last one. Then you let me know. Do I leave this on so that you can listen, or you'll be happy to watch my chair as I leave because I have to go to my coaching and go about my day. So let me know. Do I leave this and you just be listening, or else to do your thing, or we'll have a meeting again, same place, same time tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Yeah, probably 10 o'clock. I don't think I can do tomorrow, but yeah, let me know. Which one will be the best? Do I leave you listening to this whilst you go about your day, or do we end the live, then we reset another day where we can have a chat? Five steps to designing the life that you want. Those are the choices that we have. We've got 1. 5 steps to designing the life that you want. That's 1. Or do we go for think fast, talk smart, or we go for choices that can change your life? Those 3. 5 steps to designing your life that you want. Think fast, talk smart, or choices that can change your life. You choose. Number 2, think fast, talk smart. Or you mean that we can the live now, then we'll do another one on another day.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to help you design your life. We're going to use the technique of design thinking. Design thinking is something we've been working on at the D School and in the School of Engineering for over 50 years. And it's an innovation methodology. Works on products, works on services. But I think the most interesting design problem is your life. So that's what we're going to talk about. I want to just make sure everybody sees my buddy Dave Evans' face. Dave and I are the co-authors of the book, and he's the guy who helped me co-found the Life Design Lab at Stanford. So what do we do in the Life Design Lab? Well, we teach the class that helps you figure out what you want to be when you grow up. Now, I'm going to give you the first reframe. Designers love reframes. How many of you hope you never grow up and lose that childlike curiosity that drives everything you do? Raise your hand. Right. Who wants to grow up. I mean, we've been talking about curiosity in almost every one of these talks. And so I'd like to reframe this as
Okay, no
we
stress.
teach the class that helps you figure out what you want to grow into next as this life of yours, this amazing design of yours unfolds. So design thinking is what we teach, and it's a set of mindsets. It's how designers think. You know, we've been taught probably in the university to be sort of skeptical realists, rationalists, but that's not very useful as a mindset when you're trying to do something new, something no one's ever done before. So we say you start with curiosity and you lean into what you're curious about. We say you reframe problems because most of the time we find people are working on the wrong problems. They have a wonderful solution to something that doesn't work anyway. So what's the point of working on the wrong thing? We say radical collaboration because the answer's out in the world with other people. That's where your experience of your life will be. We want to be mindful of our process. There are times in the design process when you want lots of ideas. And there are times in the design process where you really want to converge and test some things, prototype some things. So you want to be good at that. And the other is bias to action. Now, you know, I'll say that we think no plan for your life will survive first contact with reality. Reality has a tendency to throw little things at us that we weren't expecting, sometimes good things, sometimes bad. So we say, just have a bias to action. Try stuff. Why? Why did we start this class? Well, I've been in office hours for a long, long time with my students. I've been teaching here for a while. Dave as well. He was teaching over at that community college in Berkeley for a while. And what we notice is, I'm sorry. It's a Stanford TEDx. What we notice is people get stuck. People really get stuck, and then they don't know what to do, and they don't seem to have any tools for getting unstuck. And designers get stuck all the time. I mean, I signed up to be a designer, which means I'm going to work on something that I've never done every day. And I get stuck and unstuck and stuck and unstuck all the time. But we also noticed as we went out and we talked to folks, not just our students, but people in mid-career and encore careers, that people have a bunch of beliefs which psychologists label dysfunctional beliefs, things they believe that are true that actually aren't true. And it holds them back. I'll give you three. First one is, what's your passion? Tell me your passion, and then I'll tell you what you need to do. Now, if you actually have one of these things, these passions, you knew at 2 you wanted to be a doctor, you knew at 7 you wanted to be a clown at Cirque du Soleil, and now you are one. That's awesome. But, you know, we're sort of research-based here at Stanford, so we went over to the Center for the Study of Adolescence, which, by the way, now goes up to 27. I met with Bill Damon, who's one of our colleagues. He's a fantastic guy. He studied this question, and it turns out less than 20% of the people have any one singular identifiable passion in their lives. So we hate a methodology which says, okay, come to the front of the line, you have a passion? Oh, you don't? Oh, I'm sorry. Go to the back when you have one, come on back and we'll help you with that. It's terrible. 8 out of 10 people say, I have lots of things I'm interested in. So this is not an organizing principle for your search or your design. The second one is, well, you should know by now, right? Don't you know where you're going? If you don't know, you're late. Now, what are you late for exactly? I'm not quite sure. But people have, you know, there's a meta-narrative in the culture. When I was growing up, 25, you were supposed to have, you know, maybe have a relationship, maybe have gotten married, starting to get the family together. When I talk to my students, my millennial students, they'll say, oh, that's got to be like 30 or something, because they can't imagine anything past like 22. But 30 is a long way out. But we know that nowadays people are forming their lives much more fluidly. They are staying in a lot more dynamic motion between about 22
Mate,
and 35.
I have to
So
go.
it's not so much
Prestigious.
you're
It
late.
was so nice to have a chat to
really
you.
kind of- it's a
But
very
more than
psychological
anything,
issue.
I'm going to leave you with some good stuff. I've queued up quite a few of these videos. Just go about them and just save the live. Join the membership. Subscribe. Thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing. And as you go about any of the videos that are on the channel, it will be great for you to share with them as well, to your friends or to your mom or anyone. It will be good for me as well to get my craft out there in the world. It will be great to get some few subscribers from the UK as well. That way I'm growing my community from across the border. So, mate, I need to go. I will see you soon. Hopefully I'll see you Tuesday or Wednesday, thereabout. And yeah, whenever I get a chance, I'll just jump onto the live. And I know it will be great because I'll be going to be chatting to you. Thank you. God bless, mate.
Because there are many many, many versions of you that you could play out, all of which would result in a well-designed life. So I'm going to give you 3 ideas from design thinking and the way, or 5 ideas, excuse me. It says 5, doesn't it? Yeah, 5 ideas from design thinking. The things that people have written back to us who've read the book or taken the class and said, hey, these were the most useful, these were the most doable, they were the most helpful. And we're human-centered designers, so we want to be helpful. The first one is this notion of connecting the dots. The number one reason people take our class, and we here read the book, is they say, you know, I want my life to be meaningful. I want it to be purposeful. I want it to add up to something. So we looked in the positive psychology literature and in the design literature, and it turns out that there's who you are, there's what you believe, and there's what you do in the world. And if you can make a connection between these 3 things, if you can make that a coherent story, you will experience your life as meaningful. The increase in meaning making comes from connecting the dots. So we do 2 things. We ask people, write a work view. What's your theory of work? Not the job you want, but why do you work? What's it for? What's work in service of? Once you have that, 250 words, then this one's a little harder to get short. What's the meaning of life? What's the big picture? Why are you here? What is your faith or your view of the world? When you can connect your life view and your work view together in a coherent way, you start to experience your life as meaningful. That's the idea number 1. Idea number 2, people get stuck, and and you got to be careful because we can reframe almost anything, but there's a class of problems that people get stuck on that are really, really bad problems. We call them gravity problems. Essentially, there's something you cannot change. Now you have, not you, but I know you have a friend, and you've been having coffee with this friend for a while, and they're stuck. They don't like their boss, they don't like their partner, they don't like their job. There's something they don't like, but nothing's happening, right? Nothing's happening with them. If Dave were here, he'd say, look, you can't solve a problem you're not willing to have. You can't solve a problem you're not willing to have. So if you've got a gravity problem, and you're simply not willing to work on it, then it's just a circumstance in your life. And the only thing we know to do with gravity problems is to accept. In the design thinking chart, you start with empathy, then you redefine the problem, then you come up with lots of ideas, and you prototype and test things. But that only works if it's a problem you're willing to work on. The first thing to do is accept. Once you've accepted, this is a gravity problem, I can't change it. You know, this is a company the company is a family-run company, and the name of the founder is on the door, and if you're not in the family, you can't be the president. You're right, you can't. So now you have to decide, what do you want to do? Is that a circumstance that you can reframe and work in, or do you need to do something else? So be really careful about gravity problems because they're pernicious and they really get in the way. But back to this idea of multiples. I do a little thought experiment with my students. And I say, you know, the physicists up at SLAC have kind of demonstrated that this multiverse thing might be real. You've heard of this, right? That there are multiple parallel universes, one right next to each other. And I said, you know, we'll do a thought experiment. Let's say you could live in all the multiverses simultaneously. And not only that, but you would know about your life in each one of these instances. So you could go back and be the ballerina, and the scientist, and the CPA, and whatever else you wanted to be. You could have all these lives in parallel. When I ask them, how many lives are you? How many lives would you want? I get answers from 3 to 10,000. But, you know, we've sort of done the average. It's about 7.5. Most people think they have about 7.5 really good lives that they could live. And here's the deal, you only get one. But it turns out it's not what you don't choose, it's what you choose in life that makes you happy. Nevertheless, we reframe this and we say, great, there's more lives than one in you. So let's go on an odyssey and let's really figure out those lives. And we ask people to do some design. In the ideate bubble, it's about having lots of ideas. So we say, let's have some ideas. We're going to ideate your future, but you can't ideate just one. You have to ideate 3. Now, there's some research from the School of Education that says if you start with 3 ideas and you brainstorm from there, you get a much wider range of ideas. The ideas are more generative, and they lead to better solutions to the problem rather than just starting with 1 and then brainstorming forward. So we always do 3s. There's something magical about 3s. We have people do 3 lives, and it's transformational. we give them this little rubric. One, the thing you're doing, the thing you're doing right now, whatever your career is, just do it. And you're going to do it for 5 years, and it's going to come out great. So, I mean, in design, we're sort of values neutral, except for one thing. We never design anything to make it worse, right? I have been on some teams that made some pretty bad products, but we weren't trying to. We were trying to make it better. So, thing one, your life, make it better. And also put in the bucket list stuff. You want to go to Paris, want to go to the Galapagos before the guy with the ice thing, before it's all underwater and we can't see it anymore. So that's plan one. Your life now goes great. Plan two, I'm really sorry to tell you, but the robots and the AI stuff, that job doesn't exist anymore. The robots are doing it. We don't need you to do that anymore. Now what are you going to do? So what do you do if the thing that you've got goes away? And everybody's got a side hustle or something that they can do to make that work. And three is, what's your wild card plan? What would you do if you didn't have to worry about money? You got enough. You're not fabulously wealthy, but you got enough. And what would you do if you knew no one would laugh? My students come into my office hours a lot of times and they'll say something like, well, what I really want to do is this, but I can just hear people saying, you didn't go to Stanford to do that, did you? Right? Because somehow or other, if you went to Stanford, you have to do some of the amazing things that the past speakers have been doing. But what would you do if you had enough money and you didn't care what people thought? Anything from, I'm going to go study butterflies to I want to be a bartender, in Belize. What would you do? And people have those three plans. Now, what happens when they do this is, one, they realize, oh my gosh, I could actually have imagined 3 completely parallel lives. They're all pretty interesting. 2, they rarely go become a bartender, in Belize. But a lot of times, the things that come up on the other plans were things that they left behind somehow. In the busyness of life, they forgot about those things. And so they bring them back and they put them in plan 1. They make their lives even better. Sometimes they do pivot. But mostly they just use this as a method of ideating all the possible wonderful ways they could have a life. Now, you could start executing that, but in our model, the thing you do after you have ideas is you build a prototype. We have met people who've quit their job and suddenly done something else. It hardly ever works. You kind of have to sneak up on it because in our model, we want to set the bar really low, try stuff, have some success, do it again. So when we say prototype in our language, what we mean is a way to ask an interesting question. What would it be like if I tried this? A way to expose the assumptions. Is this even the thing I want? Or is that just something I remember I wanted when I was 20? I got to go out in the world and do this, so I'm going to get others involved in prototyping my life. And I'm going to sneak up on the future because I don't know if this is exactly what I want. The 2 kinds of life design prototypes, one we call a prototype conversation. William Gibson, the science fiction writer, has a famous quote, "The future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed." So there is someone who's a bartender in Ibiza. He has been doing it for years. I could go meet him and have a conversation, he or she. Somebody else is doing something else I'm interested in. All these people are out there. They're living in my future today. They're doing what I want to do today. And if I have a conversation with them, I just ask for their story, and everybody will tell you their story. If you buy them a cup of coffee, they'll tell you the story. And if I hear something in the story that rings in me, we have this thing we call narrative resonance. When I hear a story that's kind of like my story, something happens. And I can identify that as a potential way of moving forward. The other one is a prototype experience. I was working with, Dave and I were working with a woman, sort of mid-career in her 40s and very successful tech executive, but wanted to move from money-making to meaning-making, wanted to do something more meaningful. Thinking of going back to school, getting an MA in education, working with kids. But she's like, I don't know, I'm 45, going back to school, is that going to work? And then I heard about these millennials. They're kind of mean, and they don't like old people. What am I going to do, Bill? I said, well, you just have to go try this, Turns out, we sent her to a seminar class, into a large lecture hall class. By the way, you just put on a t-shirt that says Stanford, you walk into a class, nobody knows. She wasn't registered, but everybody, she went to the classes, and she came back and she said, you know what, it was fantastic. I walked into the lecture hall, I sat down, my body was on fire. It was interesting. I'm so interested in the way the lecture was going. And then I met these millennials that turn out they're pretty interesting people. I've set up 3 prototype conversations, and they think I'm interesting because I'm coming back to school and I'm 45. So she had a felt experience, because we are more than just our brains. She had a felt experience that this might work for her. So those are 2 ways you could prototype your way forward. The last idea. You want to make a good decision well. So many people make choices and they're not happy with their choices because they don't really know, how do they know what they know, right? It's a hard thing, particularly nowadays when we have so many choices. So we have a process. Again, it comes from the positive psychology guys. Gather and create options. Once you get good at design, you're really good at coming up with lots of options. You got to narrow those down to the working list that you can work with. Then you make the choice, you make a good choice, and then of course you agonize that you did the wrong thing. All my students have what is called FOMO, fear of missing out. What if I didn't pick the right thing? I had someone came into my office and said, I'm going to declare 3 majors and 2 minors, and I said, did you plan on being here for a few years? It's not going to happen, right? So we don't say that. We say, you want to let go and move on. And all these have some psychological basis in them. Let me tell you about. So once you get good at gathering and creating ideas, you also want to make sure you leave room for the good, the lucky ideas, the serendipitous ideas. And this is a guy named Tony Hsieh. He was the CEO at Zappos. He sold it to Amazon. But he had before you became an employee at Zappos, you had to take a test, and the test was, are you lucky? 1, 2, or 3, I'm not very lucky, I'm not sure why. 7, 8, 9, 10, I'm very lucky, great things happen to me all the time, I'm not sure why. He wouldn't hire anybody that was not lucky. I think is probably illegal, but it was based on a piece of research where psychologists did the same thing, rate yourself from lucky to unlucky, and then they had people read New York Times, the front section of New York Times, 30 pages, lots of articles. And the graduate student said, please count the number of either headlines or photographs, depending on the test. And if you get the right, when you get the whole thing read and you count the number of photographs, just tell the person at the end, and if you got the right number, you get $100. Of course, you all know that when a graduate student tells you what the experiment is, that's not the experiment. So inside this thing that looked like a New York Times, 30 pages, front page, inside all the stories were little pieces of text that said, if you read this, the experiment's over, collect an extra $150. People who rated themselves as unlucky, by and large, got the right answer, 36 headlines, whatever it was, got the $100. People who read themselves as lucky, 7, 8, 9, or 10, 80% of the time noticed the text, got the extra $150. It's not about being lucky. It's about paying attention to what you're doing and keeping your peripheral vision open. Because it's in your peripheral vision that those interesting opportunities show up, right? That you were not expecting. So you want to get good at being lucky. Narrowing down, this is quite simple. If you have too many choices, you go into what psychologists call choice overload, and then you have essentially no choices. Here's the experiment. This was done at Stanford. You walk into a grocery store and there's a nice lady with she's got a table, and on the table she has 6 jams, and you come over, try the jams, to have a sample, buy some jam. 6 jams, about third of the people who will go by pick a jam or stop and test something, and about a third of those actually buy a jam. Okay, that's the baseline. Next week you walk in, 24 jams. Jalapeno, strawberry, banana, whatever, all sorts of jams. Well, guess what happens? Twice as many people stop, look at all these jams, it's so interesting. 3% of the people buy. When you have too many choices, you have no choice. What do you do when you have too many choices? Just cross off a bunch of choices. The psychologists tell us we can't handle more than 5 to 7. I'd say it's 5. If you've got a bunch of choices, cross them all off. Just pick the 5 and then make your decision there. Oh my God, what if I pick the wrong ones? What if I cross off the wrong ones? Right? Well, you won't, because it's the pizza or Chinese food thing. You're at the office and everybody says, hey, let's go out to lunch today. That sounds great. What do you want to do? Pizza or Chinese food? I don't care. Okay, everybody gets together, and halfway, in the elevator on the way down, someone says, let's get Chinese food. And they go, no, I want pizza. You won't make the decision until you won't decide how you feel about the decision until the decision's made. That's a piece of research that's been done again and again and again. So just cross them off. If you cross off the wrong one, you'll have a feeling somewhere in your stomach that you did the wrong thing. Choosing. This is about that feeling in your stomach. You cannot choose well if you choose only from your rational mind. This is Dan Goleman, who wrote the book on emotional intelligence. He does a lot of research on this, a lot of brain science. There's a part of your brain, way down in the base brain, the basal ganglia, that summarizes emotional decisions for you. I did something, got good emotional response from that, good, check. Did something, a little bad emotional response to that. It summarizes all of the emotions that you have felt and how your decisions were valence, positive or negative in emotion. The problem with that part of your brain is it's so early in the brain, it doesn't talk to the part of your brain that talks. It has no connection to the prefrontal cortex or anything else. It's only connected to your GI tract and your limbic system. So it gives you information through you can't make good decisions. Hard for me, but this is also the work of who is a distinguished scientist at Harvard, despite the fact that he's doing insurance commercials now. And he's been studying decision making and how do you make yourself happy. So you walk in, another psychology experiment, the postdoc has got 5 Monet prints, 5 pictures from Monet, and you rank them from best to least. I like this one the most, I like this one the least. Number 1 and number 5. Thank you very much, the experiment's over. Oh, by the way, as you're walking out, the grad student says, I kind of screwed up and I bought too many of number 2 and 3. So if you want to take one home, you can just have it. 2 conditions. In one case, take it home and have it, but don't bring it back because I'm kind of embarrassed, and just keep it. You can't exchange it. Second condition, I got lots of these. If you don't like the one you picked, you can swap it back and pick another one. And of course, everybody picks number 2. It's a little better than number 3. Bring people back in a week later, say, re-rank the stimuli. Which one do you like now? The people who are allowed to change their mind don't like their painting. They don't like the print. They don't like the other one anymore. They don't like any of them anymore. In fact, they don't like the whole process, and they have destroyed their opportunity to be happy. The people who were told, you pick it, it's yours, you can't return it, love their print. They typically rank it as number 1. And think the rest of them suck. If you make decisions reversible, your chance of being happy goes down like 60 or 70%. So let go and move on. Make the decision irreversible. And by the way, as a designer, that's no problem because you're really good at generating options. That's what you're great at ideation. You're really good at prototyping to get data in the world to see if that world is going to be the world you want to live in. So you have no fear of missing out. It's just a process, mindful of process. Collect, reduce, decide, move on. That's how you make yourself happy. So the 5 ideas, connecting the dots to find meaning through work and life views. Stay away from gravity problems because I can't fix those and neither can you. Reframe those to something that is workable. Do 3 plans, never 1. Always do 3 of everything. 3 ideations for any of the problems you're working on to make sure that you've covered not just the ideas that you had when you started, but all the other ideas that are possible. Prototype everything in your life before you jump in and try it, and choose well. There's no point in making a good choice poorly. Choose well, and you will find that things in your life are much easier. And you can do this. We know you can because thousands of students have done it. 2 PhD studies have been done in the class that demonstrate higher self-efficacy, lower dysfunctional beliefs. It's a fascinating process to watch people who don't think of themselves as creative go through this class and walk out saying, you know what, I'm a pretty creative person. What David Kelly calls creative confidence. So we know you can do it. Thank you very much. It's simple. Get curious, talk to people, and try stuff. And you will design a well-lived and joyful life. Thank you.
About 2 decades ago, when I was a PhD student at UC Berkeley, I found myself in a seminar taught by a psychology professor who is renowned for his research on self-worth theory, on motivation, teaching, and learning. I had no business being there. That had nothing to do with my research interests, but I found it had everything to do with my academic life. What I learned in that seminar and in the myriad of discussions with Marty has been a gift to my understanding of the human condition. It made me think back those 20 years before that in school. I mastered the craft and art of procrastination. The mind games, the rationalizations, the justifications. Anybody know about these? Yes. Oh, some experts in the room. And so, but that gift is something that I'd like to share with you today, at least some of that. This quote captures a certain perspective, a way of thinking about procrastination. Lots of ways to approach it. We can think of it as a bad habit, for instance, but I want to ask you to consider more deeply, to introspect, look inside, and look for the deep motivational roots of procrastination so that we can overcome that and flourish and truly thrive in our lives and in our work as teachers and as learners. So my hope for you is that you'll take away from this talk a very different understanding of what procrastination is. And this is important. It's not just conceptual frameworks and theories, which I'm going to teach you, but also to understand it in a different ethical or moral sense. I want you to think that procrastination isn't shameful. It's not a flaw. It's actually pretty predictable. It's something we can really expect if we understand the dynamics of motivation and the circumstances under which it arises. It's not surprising that we see procrastination a lot at Princeton, because you can't spell procrastination without P-R-I-N-C-T-O-N. Anybody noticed that before? So what is it about a circumstance, a place like Princeton or colleges in similar circumstances that leads to procrastination? Well, one is that we're highly selective. And schools, all schools evaluate us. So it's an evaluative environment where it's competitive. We're often competing with one another. Often there's limited rewards and recognition. More people want A's than can reasonably expect to get them. In those circumstances, we can fully expect that people will seek to protect themselves, the meaning of not getting that reward, the meaning of not getting that recognition for their self-concept and their self-worth. It's not just the grade that's on the line. It's more than that. And I